Yep.
All right. So we are recording the interview of Larry DuPree. This interview is being conducted by David Morse and Jim Mitchell from Wright State University's Veteran Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at Wright State University's Veteran and Military Center. It is 3:24 p.m. on May 19th, 2017. All right. Larry, let's start off with when and where you were born.
Was born in Paducah, Kentucky, August 20th, 1946.
Okay. And who are your parents?
Parents both deceased, Jane and Bill DuPree.
Okay. What were their occupations?
Mother was a hairdresser, and Dad he was a fabrication specialist at Union Carbide nuclear plant in Paducah.
Okay. Do you have any siblings?
I have one sister, and she's 4 years older than I am.
Okay.
So I'm the younger one.
You're the younger one. How was that growing up?
Pardon?
How was that growing up with the older sister?
Well, because there was 4 years difference, we got along very well because there wasn't any competition at all. You know, she was older. I knew I couldn't do the things she wanted to do, and she didn't want to do the things I did. So it worked out pretty well.
Good. Good. Did she join the military?
No. No, she got out when she left high school. She got married right away, and she did a career at American Airlines.
Oh, good for her. So what did you do before the service?
For the service, went to school and graduated high school. I did 1 year of college and decided I didn't want to do that and decided I wanted to join the military instead. So I joined the Air Force in '65. And then it's interesting, when I got out of the Air Force and I took advantage of the GI Bill and I went to University of Cincinnati, have a business management degree from there. And although I had a C average in high school, I graduated UC with a 3.8 GPA. So I did learn some things, and I think the service was very good for me.
Sure.
So, Larry, where did you take basic training at?
Basic training, All Air Force, Lackland Air Force Base, Texas.
Okay. And where did you go out after basic training? Where did you go for technical training?
Well, the Air Force was interesting. The reason I joined the Air Force, the recruiter told me that I could, after taking the battery of tests that they have, he said, well, you can do just about anything you want to do. And I was interested in the computer field. It was new and coming up to speed at that time. I said, I'm interested in that. Not a problem. So I went through basic training, sat down across from the sergeant, give him my next assignment, and he said, do you want to be a air policeman, a medic, or a cook? I said, wait a minute. I didn't say it real loud because I'd just been through basic, but I said, I thought I was going to go into the computer field. He said, no, computer fields aren't open. If you think we're going to let you sit around here for 3 or 4 months waiting for a school to open for computers, you got to, well, I won't say what he said, but you get the idea. So I picked the medical field.
So where did you get your initial medical training at?
From there I went to Gunner Air Force Base.
Okay.
And then from there did the 90230, I think is what it was called back then. And then went to to Pope Air Force Base and did some more medical training there. Matter of fact, we worked in the emergency room at Womack Army Hospital, and that's where I got a lot of the medical training over there.
Okay, so you went from tech school straight into an air vac assignment, or?
Yeah, we didn't have our wings at that point,
Yeah.
but I did. That was what Pope was assigned for, the airvac squadron there, and we were scheduled to go, or charted to go anywhere in the world on 24-hour notice, and for any disasters or things that might come up. And then we spent total medical training I had was about 18 months. And right at the end of that is when we got orders for Vietnam. Like a lot of us, we volunteered to go over there. You know, we wanted to adventurous and wanted to do some different things. And Vietnam was coming on strong there, 64, 65.
So you actually were more or less doing like a direct duty assignment. Did you get a formal training?
Yeah, we did training at Womack. Yeah,
Okay.
the Army trained us. There was actually a school over there. Now, some of them went to other Air Force schools, but I think they knew all along where we were going, so they were trying to get us trained wherever they could send us.
So, as an airvac tech, what were you initially trained to do?
Aerovac, initially trained in wounds and wound management. That's what we specialized in. Knew very little about diseases other than what I learned in the basic medical schools at Gunner. But we got a lot of training in that at Womack, and that's what we were assigned to do. And little did I know how much that was going to pay off in the year that followed.
So, when I knew the unit in Pope, it was the first airvac squadron. Was it still the first airvac squadron or first group? Or
I don't really know how long it had been at Pope, but our 903rd was the first unit that went to Vietnam. And we went over on 3 C-130s, and we island hopped all the way over. It took us 5 days to get over to Vietnam, and landed in Quin Yon. And one of the three always had mechanicals, so we always landed on an island. They had to fix one of them, and then we'd go as a group again to three C-130s to Vietnam. We landed in Quin Yon, and I remember my first recollection of Vietnam was how beautiful the countryside was. And we landed in Quin Yon. It was probably during monsoon. I didn't know what monsoon was when I landed over there, but it had been raining that morning, and the mist was over the mountains. And like I say, it was, man, this could be all right, is what my initial thought was. And things changed after that. But
my first thought when I got there was the smell and the heat.
mm-hmm.
It just blew right off. I mean, I got there in December and opened the door, and it was 90% humidity with 90 degrees, and it was like,
Well, it wasn't that bad when we landed. It changed though. We got on the trucks and went to our base of operations, Phuket, in the Central Highlands. It seemed like it took about an hour. I can't remember how long the road was. We went through the little villages, and about an hour after we left there, then the sun came out. And that's when I got the other side of Vietnam that you're talking about.
so basically the 903rd was stood up at Pope,
Yeah.
and then, but you hadn't really done anything until you actually got to Vietnam, and then you were for real.
We'd made a couple of runs. Dominican Republic was hot during that time too, so we made a couple of medevac runs over there. We didn't do anything over there except pick up litter patients and bring them back to the States.
So it was a live mission then?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you weren't training, you were flying live missions out
Yeah.
of Pope.
Or we were moving equipment around in the warehouse.
How many folks, yeah, they still do that a lot. So how many people initially deployed with the
It was about 100. 100 of us went over on those three with all of our medical gear. We had all of our GP large tents, radio equipment. We had the whole unit that went over together.
So when you got to Phuket, you were actually living in field conditions? There was no
No,
barracks?
actually, Phuket was a new base. It was best I remember, it was an F-100 fighter base. But they were building barracks. The base had just starting to build up, and we were able to move into brand new barracks. They hadn't finished them yet. The roofs weren't completed, so it rained the night we got there again. Rain landing, heat during the day, and then rained again that night. And all of us got wet because they just didn't have everything finished.
So how soon after you got to Vietnam did you start flying actual missions?
What was really interesting about our situation was the next day that we were at Phuket, the commander, Major Cradival, called us all to a 903rd squad meeting. And he was talking about what our new assignments may be. They were still trying to decide what we were going to be doing over there. There was some controversy even then about why we were even there with some of the Army generals, from what he told us. So they were trying to figure out what kind of role we were going to play. My first duty over there was to go down to Cam Ranh Bay, and worked on the hospital wards down there for about 2 weeks. And then from there they sent us, I think my first assignment after that, when it got interesting, was from Cam Ranh Bay up to Dong Ha Marine Base.
So now you used what they call opportune aircraft. Can you explain what that is?
What that means is our squadron had no aircraft assigned to us. So when we were in a place, that's what our radio operators were for. When we went somewhere, we would call aircraft in. And it could be helicopters, it could be C-9s, it could be C-130s if the airstrip was big enough to handle that many litter patients. So it just depended on what we need, what our requirements were, and I had to call aircraft in to meet our mission requirements.
So what did the normal, now today, a normal air vac crew consists of 2 nurses and 3 techs, an alert crew, 2 nurses and 2 techs, or 1 nurse and 2 techs. What did you guys have?
When we went to a field location, of course, most of the squadron was at Phuket, and then we were scattered out wherever they needed us. Anytime we flew, unless it was a C-130 mission where we might have had 30 or 40 or even more patients on it, we were a lone medic, and we flew ourselves. No nurses were involved. We were one of the few Air Force medevac units that flew without nurses assigned. And that has to do with a lot of the training that we received too, that we could handle that kind of mission and do it professionally and do it correctly.
Now, can you describe your field medic kit, like what all was included in that?
When 2 years ago I went to the Sea Stars at University of Cincinnati, they have a training facility there with the Air Force. And they invited me down because they knew I was a Vietnam medic. And they were going to show me what they fly with today. So that's when I got a real distinct difference in what we used to have and what they have now. Of course, what they were training on were the larger aircrafts, you know, the C-141s or C-17s,
Yeah.
and what they have to fly with now and the equipment that they have. And I walked into their room, which was really a mock setup of the interior of an aircraft. And I saw the electronic instruments and said, they said, have anything like this when you were in Vietnam? I said, we were lucky to have bandages and morphine sticks. And that is the truth. We did everything, basic medical trauma, you know, stop the bleeding, prevent shock, and, you know, if they're in severe pain, give them a morphine stick. And that's what we did.
So so basically the 903rd was headquartered out of Phuket.
Yeah.
And then you had operational detachments everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would rotate in, rotate out.
Yeah, we'd rotate in and out, even places. We might go to Dong Ha 3 or 4 times in the year we were there, depending on what the needs were there. Khe Sanh, we had people flying in and out of Khe Sanh and rotating the people. There's one, and it's interesting, Khe Sanh was a Marine base, but we were in their Charlie Med facility. And it was a facility where they had Navy doctors, and then we handled the medevac and aerovac out of that facility. So there was one documentary that was done, you see it on TV, a 4 or 5 point series, and they did a segment on Khe Sanh, and it was actually in our medevac facilities where it was filmed. And 2 or 3 of our guys that are here this week were in that shot, in that film. Never heard about the Air Force, so it was all the Marines. And that was fun. You know, we had a job to do, and we were honored to be there and be able to help and do our job.
If you ever make it to one of the Airvac Association unit, the AMEA, there's a guy by the name of Roger Lutz. Need to hook you up with him because he was our first cav medic that was a Khe Sanh.
Mm-hmm.
We probably passed each other.
Probably did. Mm-hmm.
And he flew Airvac later.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But, so you took part, you were there at the height of the Tet Offensive.
Yeah, we were also earlier in '67 when the Marines took Hill 881 and 861. We were there during that operation as well. And then later the Tet Offensive happened, and we were there supporting that operation also.
I was thumbing through some of the paperwork that Charlie had out on display, and they were talking about was it at Phuket, your home base, that your facility actually came under fire?
Yeah, but that we looked at that as an R&R place. We really did. It came under fire, I think, one time, and you know, we were happy to get back there. Out of the year that I spent in Vietnam, I probably spent a total of 30 days in Phuket, you know, going in and out flying. But if you counted all the days up, about 30 days. And we were always glad to get back there because it Yeah, I was in Vietnam, but we considered it a kind of a nice place to be rather than in the field.
Now, did you take R&R while you were in Vietnam?
No, a lot of my ancestors served in the military, and I remember Dad telling stories about World War II. They didn't do R&R. Not only they didn't do R&R, but they stayed there till the war was over. They were wounded or killed. And I always felt like Vietnam, well, that's a year's duty. And I would have felt funny if I'd left that to go on R&R, so I just didn't do it. So I'm one of the few that didn't, I think. If you talk to the rest of them, they probably did.
Well, backing up a second, you participated in the evacuation of the guys from the Battle of Dak To in '67,
Yeah.
and then you were in Khe Sanh in '68, the Tet Offensive.
And we
And
flew
you
in
were-
and out of Hue during the Tet Offensive. I flew at
And you
several
were what,
missions in and out of
19,
there.
20 years old?
Turned 21 in Vietnam.
That had to have been a culture shock. I mean, you trained as a medic and then all of a sudden you see the gruesome reality. How did you deal with that?
I think that's where your training kicks in. You know, it's no different than being a doctor or nurse. You know, you train for that, and you've got a job to do, and that's what your mental focus is. You know, I've got a job to do. I can't break down. I can't do anything but do what's in front of me and do the best I can for that casualty.
Now, your unit, the 903rd, which stood up to go to Vietnam and stood down after Vietnam, and had one of the unique distinctions of not receiving one but two presidential unit citations,
Mm-hmm.
one from the Air Force and one from the Marines or
That's
the
correct.
Navy.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain to us what a presidential unit citation is?
Well, instead of an individual award, it's an award for the unit. And at the time, and I don't really know how many casualties we flew out of Vietnam or took care of in Vietnam, but I know the numbers are pretty high because, you know, we'd get, the major would come out to the field sometime and talk to us about the number of casualties that we medevaced. And it was noticed by somebody higher up, and they thought that we should get a presidential unit citation award for that, our whole unit. And it's one that we looked at, you know, as just that. It was a unit. We were a cohesive unit. We had a job to do, and I don't know of any problems that we had the entire year we were there, except medevacing the casualties and getting them to care as soon as we can. Most of the flights that we were on were only 20 to 30 minutes, and going back to Sea Stars, you know, that's across the ocean somewhere, so they had to have a lot more equipment than we had. But we were just really first aid, get them to care, and that's what we did.
How did you decompress after a bad mission?
We were usually going to the next one. You know, as soon as we got to where we needed to go, like flying from Khe Sanh or Dong Ha to Da Nang, that's usually the larger hospitals that we flew to, we'd be on another plane going back either that night, that afternoon, or spend the night and go back the next morning. So there was very little downtime to even think about it. And it's like a lot of military people. You know, we had a unit out there. We got to get back to the unit as soon as we can.
So, okay, this always went back and forth. How many, you were awarded the Air Medal
Mm-hmm.
for X amount of combat missions flown. How many missions did you end up flying? Do you recall?
368.
368.
Some numbers I remember very well.
368 combat missions for 365 days in country. Wow. And so how many air medals did you end up being awarded?
3 air medals, because
Three
I
air
was
medals.
short about, 30 for the next one. Because it's every 100 missions you get an air medal.
Now, were you ever shot at?
Oh, yeah. And that's something that's, it happens so fast you don't even really think about it, especially if you're with casualties on an aircraft, because it just goes through the fuselage just like that, and it's over with. So you don't have to think time to look and say, oh, is he going to get me, because it's already over with.
Now, your unit lost some people, I understand, from looking at the unit history.
Well, we lost, in our particular unit, the initial unit that went over, we didn't lose any. I think we had 1 or 2, maybe 3 that were wounded, but no one was killed. And it wasn't until the next unit group that came over. Sergeant McCullough, I think was his name,
Mm-hmm.
and he died on a mission. But and I don't know whether it was a mission with casualties on it, because I've read two different reports after I got back. I do know whatever happened, they flew a chopper. He was on a chopper and they flew into the side of a mountain, so it wasn't hostile fire.
Yeah, I remember reading something about that.
Mhm.
So you did your 365 days in Vietnam, and where'd you go next?
From there, I went to Kelly Air Force Base in Texas, and was still assigned to an airvac squadron. And we flew the milk run, so to speak. You know, they already back in the States, their wounds were stabilized, and they were pretty much either send them to another hospital for specialized care or get them to a hospital closer to their home. So it was quite a bit different. You know.
So at Kelly Air Force Base, you serviced, what, two of the largest military hospitals in,
Yeah.
in the world?
Mhm.
And that would have been what?
Yeah, the planes when we first got there were the Super Constellations. Those are some of my favorite aircraft. You know, they just looked really neat to me. They were way off the ground, looked like they were 3 stories off the ground, but they weren't. But 4-engine props, and they were very comfortable to fly on. And then just as I was getting out, because I was at Kelly, I was discharged at Kelly, the C9s just started coming into service, and I might have had 4 missions on the C9s.
And that
that's
was a
pretty neat
world
too.
of difference.
In Vietnam, we were flying on the C-7 Caribous. That was one of my favorite STOL aircraft over there, short takeoff and landing. And of course, we flew on Hueys. We did the C-123s. And again, if the missions were large enough and the runways are large enough, we could bring in C-130s. And I think most of the C-130 flights were out of Dong Hai and Khe Sanh, and we even had so many casualties at 881 and 861, we actually even had to do triage, and did that twice over in Vietnam. And triage, of course, is where you have so many casualties coming in where you have to decide, we didn't, the doctors decided at Charlie Med as to which ones were going to get care and which ones, you know, were, you know, you just had to decide. They had to decide on the spur of the moment, typically as to who we're going to provide the resources to that we have available. And he wanted to take care of all of them, and we did the best we could for all of them. But they were still in order when so many casualties came in that you had to decide who you were going to spend the time with.
So you got, okay, you did 4 years and you got out.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel about your time in the service after you got out? I mean, you got out just when the anti-war sentiment was really going strong.
Yeah, when I was in Vietnam, back up a little bit, I actually volunteered to go back because I was proud of what we did. I was honored to be there, to be a part of that. And it was a calling to the country, so to speak. You know, the country needs you over there. We're stopping communism, and we're doing what we need to do. So I volunteered to go back, but at the time, I couldn't stay in country. I had to come back to the States for a period and then go back later. When I got out of we flew out of Vietnam and landed on the West Coast. I can't remember exactly which Air Force base it was at. And then we flew to, no, it wasn't at an Air Force base. It was a civilian airport. And I can't remember which one it was though. And I know it was civilian because you know, they had protesters that were there waiting for the people to get off the airplane. And they didn't tell us at the time, you know, to wear civilian clothes. So I was in my military uniform.
Oh, I'm sorry, what year were you coming back from Vietnam?
In 68, March of 68.
Okay, so this is still pretty new.
Yeah, still pretty new. And Tet Offensive was just over. And very proud of our service over there during Tet. We kicked their butt from here to Sunday. And military did an exceptional job of cleaning it up. And to sidestep a little bit, I don't know if this is true or not, but it makes sense to me that General Giap, the North Vietnamese defense minister, I think that was his title, in his memoirs after the war, he said he already knew that the U.S. was going to get out of Vietnam, and he didn't want a standing army waiting for him in South Vietnam when the U.S. got out. So his whole purpose, from what I understand, from what I read, people that read his memoirs, was that he didn't want the Viet Cong there either, because that would have been a standing army against the North Vietnamese. Because he thought at that time that the Viet Cong might have turned and said, we want the South for ourselves, and also the Vietnamese army. So his idea was to have the Viet Cong units go against the U.S. military. And basically that's what happened. We ground them up. And there were some North Vietnamese units involved because, we ran into them at Hue in Quezon. But if that was his objective, he did it very well. Then coming back to what we started with, came into the U.S., and I'm reading headlines on the papers as I go by because I was interested also in what the news reports were. We didn't get any of that over there. We got the stars and stripes, and that was it. And I saw headlines about U.S. is pretty much in trouble because of the Tet Offensive. How could they let the enemy surprise them? Well, I don't know any enemy that's going to let you know what they're doing. You have to go and take care of them as they present themselves, and we did that very well. And then some of the protesters, started. They saw me in uniform, and got in my first fight out of the service right there in that airport, and broke a guy's arm, as a matter of fact. And I don't know. I guess there's a statute of limitations on that. But that was part of the training too. You asked me how I felt. I really had no feeling. I was 24 hours before that I was in Vietnam, and then landed in the U.S. and see that. So I was still in kind of a war footing mode. I was in my zone. This is my zone, and I'm here to do a job, and that's kind of what it was. It was a mental attitude that you have, and that just flew in the face. How could they be protesting, a success in Vietnam that the U.S. military has just achieved, and have this kind of stuff going on over here? But anyway, that's where I was, and then I came home and took leave, and very supportive in the hometown. Nothing there at all. It's just those protesters that really got under my skin. But home, it was great. Took leave, went back to Kelly Air Force Base, and did my tour of duty there, but I did cancel my volunteer orders to go back. I said, I don't think I want any part of this. If the country isn't behind it, why do I even need to be over there? Kind of feel the same way today. You want my politics today or not?
Yeah, absolutely. In talking about this, obviously, you changed your perspective on Vietnam based off of, not overall, but it changed your mind as far as going back.
Yeah, and it wasn't that day only. It was when I got back, still reading newspaper reports, watching the news, and
right.
Just it's not for me anymore.
And so then you moved on. What was your deciding factor to get out of the military at that point?
So as I said earlier, we spent 18 months of training, wound management, very highly specialized, and went to Vietnam, a tour duty over there, everything that we saw and did over there to save lives and take care of the casualties as they came. Come back to Kelly, and the aerovac runs were pretty much milk runs. Like I said earlier, you didn't have a lot to do. We were off duty when we weren't flying. We were working in the hospitals. The nurses were there. Nothing against nurses. It's just that we had all this training. They didn't want to use it. You're in the States now. You can't do those kind of things that you do over there. You take some bedpans and run those down to the commode or whatever. And I said, this is not what I want to do. Sorry.
Oh, fine. Tell President Trump to wait.
Sorry about that. Hopefully you can edit that
So
out.
Yeah.
you got out and you went back to school, and as you stated earlier, where you were a so-so student in high school, you just kind of excelled in college.
Yeah, change of focus. You know, I think that's what the military is very good for. You know, if you don't get caught up in the negative aspects of it, the military is very good for most people. It's good for me, and it taught me discipline. It taught me that you know, in high school, somebody like that would interrupt me. Okay, what are we going to do now? Let's go and party, or let's go and run around the street. I don't want to do my homework. Well, when I went back to UC, I was already married, had one kid, working full time. So this was night school that we're talking about, and totally change of attitude. I even noticed it myself. I thought it was kind of funny sometime, and talking to my wife about it at the time, I said, there's no way I would have done this when I was in high school or just thereafter. And that's what the military is very good for. I think it teaches discipline if you're willing to learn it.
So you went into business and eventually you became your own business.
Mm-hmm.
You ran your own company. Did you participate in anything like the VFW, or when did you get involved with like the AirVac Association and the 903rd?
Well, actually, the AirVac, the 903rd, happened about 4 or 5 years ago. Dan Hendricks, who's being interviewed in there now, he found me on Facebook, and he found me because of what I do for the live taps deal. You know, I had some Facebook page, and he saw, I think I know him, and one thing kind of led to another. So through Facebook, we started connecting and finding people. And as a result, we have these reunions. We're not a 501c or anything like that. We're just a group of people that get together and have a good time. And we try to find enough people to have one once a year, and we've been lucky enough to do that. And this year we have some new people that have come in, so we keep finding stragglers every now and then, we call ourselves. And but that started about, our first reunion were 3 of us in Nashville, Tennessee, about maybe 6 years ago now. Time gets away from me when you get old.
So you knew Charlie when Charlie was a youngster.
Oh yeah, Charlie and I at Pope, we used to room together. You know, we'd have the barracks together, and we got away from the big open
And
bay.
you guys
deals.
were almost hometown boys because you're both from Kentucky.
He's from Henderson. I was from Western Kentucky in Paducah. And Dan found me first on Facebook, and I said, well, Charlie's probably still in Central Kentucky somewhere. And we found Charlie, and then Rob Pierce, who was from Florida. And I don't know, we just started looking harder than we'd ever done it before.
Can you describe to me a little bit about your live taps playing, what you do for that?
Yeah, when I retired at 62, and got bored. I've been used to working 50, 60 hours a week, and said I can't sit around. I got to find something to do. So I was on the VA website one day, and I saw a link to Bugles Across America, an organization that provided live taps for veteran services. And I was a member there for 2 or 3 years, and then I got out of that organization, did my own thing. But I started in the fall of 2007 and volunteered to sound live taps for veteran services because we didn't like the digital. And the digital deal is done 80 to 90% of the time for all veteran services. And there are a few of us live taps players that want to do it live. And since 2007, first year, I think 2007 I might have done maybe a dozen in the fall to the end of the year. And now it's escalated. I do about 200 to 300 a year now. So I'm just over 1,900 services to date.
Wow.
I do a lot of them at Dayton National Cemetery, but I've also been as far north as Vermont, as far south as Bushnell National Cemetery in Florida, and as far west, have I been as far west? Usually it's on the east and this part of the country, but the majority have been in the Cincinnati, Dayton area.
Now, did you know how to play the bugle before you started this?
Yeah, I started the trumpet in 5th grade and went all the way through high school. And military, when I got out of high school, I didn't want anything to do with school anymore. You know, I went to college the next year, but I want to put all that aside. I want to do something different with my life. So the military had no idea I played the trumpet. And then I've since found out there's another one of our people in our reunion. He played the trumpet too. He didn't tell anybody he played trumpet in the military because we didn't want to end up in the band, or we didn't want to end up playing a bugle somewhere. Now, as I look back upon it, I wish I'd have had one in Quezon. I could have made some noise, let the Vietnamese hear it.
Now, since you got out and obviously you did well for yourself, what was your attitude? I know coming back from Vietnam, how I was treated. And I remember when I was bringing guys in my unit back and the guys in my detachment, I had 80 some odd kids working for me. When they saw this big reception and welcome home from Desert Storm, and the same thing with Iraqi freedom and whatever they're calling it in Afghanistan now. How do you feel about the receptions?
I liked what they were doing for the vets. I had no problem with that at all. And I'm like a lot of veterans. My dad never talked about World War II. He was in New Guinea and wounded over there. And I got back and I was so disgusted with the protesters and that whole scene. I didn't talk about Vietnam either. It wasn't that there were some things I couldn't talk about, because that's true also. You know, there's some things I will not touch. But there are a lot of funny stories we had over there too. You know, like they say about 80% boredom, having a good time, and 20% what the hell am I doing over here? That kind of deal. And so I loved it. You know, I thought finally the country's doing something. In my political views, I thought, well, they did learn something from Vietnam, because they went in Afghanistan, they went in Iraq, and they marched right through it, and they conquered the place. I don't know the better word for it. But then politics got involved in it, and things have gone downhill since then. And since then, too, as I work with the military honor guards, you know, they're, as we were talking earlier, they're deployed in and out of Afghanistan and Iraq and places like that, and they might do 7 or 8 tours over the 15 years they've been in. So I see them going, and when they come back to do the honor guards also. And, you know, we had situations in Vietnam where I said, well, for example, why don't we go bomb those dams? Because he was in the Stars and Stripes, you know, what we could have been doing, but we weren't doing. Why are they dropping bombs in those rice paddies over there? You know, the enemy's over there. And it made no sense to me. The rules of engagement in Vietnam were bad, but they're totally worse now. And when I hear stories about, one of them came back, infantry in Iraq, was talking about the rules of engagement were bad enough over there. He gave me one example. He said, one day we were across the canal shooting at the enemy, and the guy put his rifle down, AK-47 down, and we couldn't shoot him. He got on a bicycle. He didn't have a weapon, and he actually bicycled over another shooting position and picked up a rifle over there, and then we could shoot at him again. I said, it makes no sense at all. And for that reason alone, there's no reason for us to be over there 10 or 15 years. We could have just finished the job when we were over there. And one of the things that I talk about to people, they ask me about my service, and especially the liberals that want to talk about, you know, how bad the military is. Why did you join the military? Why did you do this? You baby killer and all this other stuff. That's what we heard in Vietnam. And my statement always has been, we didn't send ourselves over there. Civilians did. And there's not a commander in the military, Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, that sent our guys in harm's way. You know, the civilians did. It's who you elect that sent us over there. And that's my take on it now. If we aren't going to win it, we shouldn't be over there.
Well, let me change the subject a second. I met your lovely wife, Jean.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And either she screwed up or you were the luckiest man in the world.
The latter.
Tell me a little bit about your family now.
Well, family now, I've got, it's both of our second marriages. Jean and I have been married about 24 years now. And so we both have a daughter from previous marriages. So I have a stepdaughter and a daughter, and she has a stepdaughter and a daughter. But then we have grandkids among them, and that's a joy to be around the grandkids. I've got one granddaughter that just graduated this year from high school, and the others are coming up pretty close behind. But great family life. I enjoy them all the time, and she actually encourages me to do what I do, you know, with the veterans and the TAPS, and she's totally behind it. And she's she's usually the one telling everybody what I did in Vietnam and in the service, and I'm over there rolling my eyes.
Said, really?
Yeah.
We're kind of wrapping things up here.
Yeah.
What would you, I guess, what would be the message or your message for future generations?
Yeah, I was gonna just ask the same question.
Message to future generations is just don't go to war unless you're going to win it. You know, that's me in a nutshell. And I don't know what else to say. Elect the people that will decide one way or another, and don't let politics get involved in going to war. You know, those are lives we're talking about. And the casualties that I took care of, it hits more home to me than probably a lot of people, because I saw firsthand what war could do. And I don't want a single life lost or maimed or wounded unless there's a purpose to it, and a purpose other than some kind of police action, or let's see if we can negotiate and talk out of this or do what and the other. If you're going to go to war, win it, and I think that'll prevent future wars. If you go in to win them, just like World War II, it's 20 years before we got into, well, not really 20. I guess I can't say that. I have to back up because we were in Korea right after that. But the Korean War was the next war we didn't win. World War II we won. If we'd won Korea, I think it might have been a number of years before we ever got into another one. We just can't seem to win them anymore.
Kind of a different question, but if you had to sum your story up, how would you describe your story?
In the military, or just?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your service, your story.
I think the military was the most fulfilling and rewarding chapters in my life. And since then, led a very good life, and had a great family and a supportive family my entire life. And been very fortunate. I have no problems at all with my life, as it has been from start to finish. And the problems that I brought back from Vietnam, you know, that's part of me now. What I saw in Vietnam was part of me, and I think in some respects it makes me a better person.
That's very good.
Well, thank you very much, Larry. And
Yes, thank you, Larry.
thank you for your service,
No, you bet.
and thank you for what you're doing for our
Thank you,
vets and their families today as a volunteer.
Yeah, and that's rewarding too.
This concludes our interview.